Can't see that either. I think it's on record, yeah. I think it says record. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased that you've all come here to the CALLERLAB session on the history and heritage of square dancing. And we have a significant share of history represented right here at the front of the hall. I wouldn't want to make it specific and detailed, but it's somewhere in the vicinity of 170 years of experience between the three of us. And I thought it would be particularly appropriate, since one among us is celebrating an anniversary today, if we started off by singing Happy Birthday to Jerry Helt. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jerry. Happy birthday to you. And we just discovered that he caught up with me. We're both born in the same month. Yes. And I'm not going to tell you when, what year it was. But one other just interesting sidelight, Bob Howell, who's on my left, and Jerry Helt is over here, and I'm Jim Mayo. But Bob was sitting there when I walked into the room, and he was reminiscing, as we tend to do. And he said, remember what Ed Gilmore told us about classes? And I said, well, it just so happens that I have been copying tapes from the early 60s, late 50s, onto CD. And one of the tapes I did recently was an Ed Gilmore tape. And on the other track on that tape was a clinic that Ed did for my local Callers Association, the Tri-State Callers, in 1961. And Bob was saying, well, yeah, Ed used to tell us about classes that we really ought to not graduate them into clubs. Did we not get it? I think we did. I had trouble getting the question, but this is Ed Gilmore's answer.
My feeling is that it doesn't much matter what a caller wants to do with dancers, with people. People are free agents. They'll do what they dadgum please. And if they stay in a beginning group for a year or two, it's the healthiest.
That's Ed Gilmore, 1961, telling us something that we are still trying to understand today. And we're going to carry on with our session. We'll hear some more of the tapes that I've recorded later in the session, but I'd like to start off by asking Bob to tell us about the early period in modern square dancing. Traditional square dancing started, as did Bob, before the war. In fact, way back into history somewhere. Jerry's going to deal with some of the music from those very early days and in the prehistoric music period. But Bob was active, was an experienced traditional caller when modern square dancing began to separate and become something different from that traditional period. And Bob's going to tell us something of his experiences during that transition period. Is that a fair assessment of what I asked you to do?
That's what I've got here anyhow. Thanks, Jim. Yes. My first statement is time of tumult. Here I was, back from the wars that many of us were, with a pretty good background in traditional square dancing, and all of a sudden, things began to change, and change in such a rapid fashion that immediately you had to have two associations. There was a Cleveland Callers Association, and then then there was a Western Callers Association. And it was confusing to me. I thought, why do we need this? Why must we have it? And then I thought, well, Howell, you better get your boots cleaned up and join the club, because the old visiting couple dancing is about to disappear. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you the truth. I have never disappeared from it. I'm still at it and have been at it for 50 years, and I doubt I will ever do a great deal with the modern of anything. I notice on the computer these days that now Contra is doing the same thing as we did several years ago. I've been involved with the computer with a traditional group out of, well, all across, I almost said New England, but there's many out in Oregon and California and Canada, etc. But now they're doing modern Contra. Western Contra had come in after the last convention out on the West Coast about 1994. They brought in a Western Contra concept, which was a little bit different than the old traditional. But it was a difficult situation. I would have people come in and say, I mean, I'd do an evening of square dance, one night stand sort of stuff down at the local hall or school. And then somebody'd walk in and they'd say, hey, when are you going to start calling square dances? I've had it happen many times. And I tell you, many times, too, I'd have people come in all dressed in Western costuming and all, and you could spot them a mile off, and towels hanging at the side and things of that sort. And it was part of the costume. It was disturbing at first to me because I didn't want to see change. We were having an enormous amount of fun with what we had, and however, well, I'll tell you, the first time I went out with Pappy Shaw, we had a stunt night, and well, the first thing Shaw said to me was, you know that a gentleman removes his hat in the house. Well, I had been told if you're a square dance caller, get your hat on so they know you're a caller. Every caller wore his hat. That's how they knew you were a caller. And Shaw Lloyd Shaw, Pappy straightened me out on that right off the bat. And I had a towel and a little leather holder on the side of me, and he asked me if I had a cold. And I said, no, I don't, Pappy. What's that all about? And then, who the dickens was it with all the fringe down the side of their pants? But, Golden. Yeah, Cal. And so for stunt night, they decorated me. On the wall up in their home, which is right above the little dance hall, they had one of those great big Mexican, what do they call? Sombreros, right? With the bells on all around the edge, yes. And so on Friday night for the dance fun, and I didn't quite understand what they were doing to me. They took a beach towel and stuck it in my belt, and it dragged about 10 feet behind me. I came in with this sombrero on, and Phyllis, I don't know where she got the crepe paper and all, but she sewed all this stuff down my pant legs so that, man, I went in there looking good. I had to turn my head sideways to get through the door to get into the dance hall. And, of course, old Shaw, Pappy, he guffawed himself absolutely silly, because here I was mocking him. And well, you didn't do that to Pappy, although he had a good sense of humor. But I was kind of new to the whole outfit, you see. But these were the things that were beginning to come into the picture. Something called club dancing, or the other word that was used rather usually was the fact that they would call it club. No, not club too, but give me another name, Jerry. What was the other one? For the club, or when you join a club. I can't think of the word. Yeah, well, a membership type of thing, that's right. But they going to become highly organized. And Shaw said right away, he said, you're going to organize yourself right out of dancing. I can remember him saying that at one of his morning lectures. So I've been around for a lot. Anybody here ever had the pleasure or the privilege of Jerry, did you ever? Oh, God love you. He had a time. In fact, the first time we were out there, and I'm going to talk about Phyllis for just a moment. She almost cried and went home. We were to waltz. And Dina Fresh and the rest of them with their very beautiful waltzing. We stepped out there, and I had learned in elementary school a little bit about it. And we started waltzing, and he said, "Stop it! Stop it! Right now! Stop that! You're doing the ignoramus waltz." And I looked at Phil, and the tears started rolling down her cheeks. She said, "I want to go home." Scared the living daylights out of her. And he was a big man, and he blustered. So I'll tell you, before the week was over, though, we no longer did an ignoramus waltz. We did a step together. We didn't do a two-step. Never have since, thank the good Lord. But the things that were coming in as Jim said, the modern Western was beginning to trickle in. Another time at a dance, and truthfully, maybe somebody in here knows this basic. I don't know it. I'd like to have got my hands on Burleson to look this up, but I think it was a star tip. And we were taught, ripple the wave. Anybody ever heard of it? We got one hand back there. Well, I couldn't even tell you what it was, but we rippled a wave, and we rippled a wave in 6 or 8 different positions all evening long. I never heard of it before, and I never heard of it since. But the basics that were coming in at that time, and this is where I bow immediately to Jim with CALLERLAB, because something had to happen. They were coming in by the thousands, and you were no one of any class at all unless you had invented at least 2 or 3 basics, do you see? And you had to have your name after it, and you had to be careful because you had to have their position or the permission to do the thing. Well, folks, I came into this square dancing as a recreation consultant. I was in recreation. I was a schoolman, actually, working on a doctorate there at Case Western Reserve, and I'd come into it to running picnics and parties and things of that sort. So my square dancing was, there was a stunt every month. You had to have some kind of a stunt. Now, not on a stunt night or at the end of the evening, but something during the evening. There had to be a stunt of some kind. And then you got them out there, and you did muss his hair and pull out his shirt tail, all that sort of stuff. Any of it still around? I think they'd kill you. Oh, at after parties. All right. Kick his shins and muss his hair and step right up and kiss him if you dare. That all sort of stuff. And swing like thunder. And that's one I do remember because, folks, today I would have a lawsuit on my hand. I was out at the Jewish Community Center that night, and I had them do Swing Like Thunder with just 2 couples. And the hands across, ladies under, hold your holts and swing like thunder. And the gents go like this, and the gals started flapping, flying up in the air, and their shoes went flying across the floor. And one woman hit another one right in the back of the head with her feet. Well, this was not uncommon. You just did these things because, and the calls that you had, oh, they were vulgar. I mean, you insulted people. Well, I did last night, too, and I said the only ones who could sit out tonight are the old men and the fat ladies. And I thought for sure somebody would be after me. But, you know, and that has gotten worse. I'd like to bring in a real quick one here because I can evaluate it that this is in a time of change. I had a group of 5th grade kids at one of the schools not too long ago, and I was doing a little dance called the Hammerschmieds Gesellen. Yeah, the Hammerschmieds Gesellen, which is a journeyman blacksmith. It's a little Austrian dance. And here are 2 little girls over here who got it right away. It was a hand clap type of thing, and they got it right away. And I said, I want you all to recognize, I've got this couple over here. And the young lady says, what? I said, we are not a couple. A 5th grade kid, this 80-year-old guy, we are a pair. So, folks, it ain't getting any better. It's getting worse. You can't hardly, the word gyp, and you contra people, you've been gypsying for years. You can't see it anymore because in Romania it's something about a derogatory remark. So that is going to have to leave our dancing. And other terms have come in. Well, I've given you an idea of some of the things that happened at Shaw's when we got out there early. And we were in that, and I have been in it ever since. I've never gotten out of it, although I did promote as best I could to the Western square dancing from, well, I had a time slot here of 1950 to 1975. And my classes, I had multi-level teaching from the time I started in 1950. I did it through the school system. There was a fall session, a winter session, and a spring session. And you got, I don't know how many we get, 25 basics that first one and a few more so that the snowbirds could go to Florida and go down there and practice everything they knew. And then when they came back, boy, they were ready for all the hot stuff, but they couldn't do or couldn't do anything like that. But they had all the other stuff that they had gotten down there. So it was a most trying time because you hardly knew what to call. One group with the old hilltop hoppers that I had, I saw this set come in all dressed identical. And I thought, oh, Lord. Well, they were there 1 week. They were there a second week, and they were there a third week. And finally, the third week, one of the ladies said, right out in the middle of the floor, she said, you have a suggestion box. Yes, I said, I do. Do you ever open it? I do. After every dance, I read it. Oh, Well, there have been some suggestions put in there, and I said, ma'am, I know your suggestion, and I'm going to mention it to everybody. When are we going to get out of the basement and start to learn some of the modern and some of the better, let's load the boat, a few things like that. And they said, when are you coming to that? I said, folks, if you're going to do that, you're going to go someplace else, because this club is going to dance basic or a mainstream level. And I kept them. I tried to keep clubs. I had 5 of them going, of the various different ones in town. But I did something else that was almost heresy. The first night that they walked into class, taught a square dance. I taught a round. Good old left footed one step for, 20 or 30 years, I guess. I taught a contra. And they got a little bit of everything, because they had a complete spread. But where I made my mistake was, when you get out to a dance, why don't you walk up to the caller and say, what tip are you going to do a contra tonight? I was also president of the Cleveland Area Callers Association. I didn't last. Oh, they were madder. You should have heard the words that were used toward me. Because we don't like contras. I don't like them. And as one fellow said one night, you going to call a contra? I said, well, not right now. He said, well, I don't like them. I said, well, you've already done 2 of them. I opened the evening with a Sicilian circle and did 2 of them, a contra dance in a circle, and he had done 2 of them. I don't like them. But most of these people would say, I don't like them, and they didn't want to ever do them. And to me, they're the most elegant form of dance that we have today. It gets a little rough with some of them, but basically there's a lot of beauty in it. So I lived through that, through the club exposure, and I always had every spring about a dozen, I'd say modestly, a dozen or 15 of the presidents of the various clubs in northeastern Ohio at about the last 2 sessions I had, and all bidding for these people that have now been through a year, or part of a year or a year square dancing, and welcoming them, giving them flyers and all, and come out to our summer fun dances. Folks, I hate anybody put the word fun in there. I think everybody at Ed Gilmore said all of them are fun. But they would get them out there, and so I went out to the park one night when they did it. They had the opportunity of one dance during the evening to get involved. Otherwise, they kept the club going. And there, as Ed's statement was, you don't try to bring new people into an old club. You start a new club, or let these people that are dancing together, let them continue. Because right now, as with the contra people, and I just learned this last month, something I didn't know before, a term called center set. Is that typical of only New England, Jim, or what? Never heard it? Okay, the center. Well, I'm going to allude to it because I think I know what it is. The center set, these people are rather proficient, and they get into the middle, and then the other people that will come in on either side, on the 2 side sets, don't ever come back again.
That's certainly true.
Yeah.
The center set is likely to be the most experienced.
Yeah. So I've lived through it. I've done the best I can in those years to try to get people into Western dancing, and it's here. It's going to continue, folks, no matter what. But I don't still see how in the dickens you're going to get people to come in and do something that I think is virtually, as Ed said, is impossible.
I think I should repeat that comment that I made. At contra dances, there are many halls are wide enough to fit 3 lines of contra dancers, and it is true that often the more experienced dancers will form on first in the contra line that's in the center of the hall, leaving the sides for the less experienced dancers. We find this in modern square dancing at the front of the hall, where the experienced dancers all square up first, leaving the back of the hall for those who are less experienced or who wish not to be seen by the caller as breaking down. Thank you, Robert, for that sharing of experience. We very much appreciate it. And we're going now to move to another Ohioan who will share with us some awareness of the music that was part of square dancing before we got to the kind of common everyday available records that we have today. From Cincinnati, Jerry Hunt.
Thank you, Jim. It's nice to be with you. And would everybody stand up? Let's take a 7th inning stretch. Yeah, I see you're sagging out there today, folks. Now, as you stand up, put your weight on your left foot. Rotate your right foot in a clockwise circle on the floor. That's the way the clock doesn't run. Keep that little circle going. And with your right hand, make a normal figure 6. Jim, what kind of a group do we have here? Usual.
I can't do it either.
Doggone it. Now that I have your attention, we're going to do a history of square dancing, of course, and a history of music, too, sort of a twofold thing, kind of pulling the two together. And we might go back. Could I go to prehistoric? Well, we found that the primates, some of the moves that we do, primates were doing. Everybody take a bow and swing. Sure, monkeys did that. Boy, this is going to be a tough one, Jim. Salamander left. Okay, enough of prehistoric. Let's move on to good. I research a lot. Moving on to a more serious subject. Our dancing really started by probably colonial style dancing, or colonial dancing by some of our early folks in this country. And they were influenced by England, of course, Ireland, Scotland, French. All these influences were on the dance figure, or figures, I should say. And if you look at our dancing today, what do we have in American square dancing today? We have dos-a-do, dos-a-dos, French back-to-back. We have what? Promenade or promenade, French. Sachet or chassé. We have Allemand and several others that we still have, and it started with some of the very early dances and the influence of the English, the French, and Scottish, and so forth. So up and down the East Coast, we had the colonial dancers, of course, that danced. There were variations along the way of different styles in different areas, or maybe an Irish group or an Irish settlement would do dances that lean to the Irish style. So there was a mixture of dance forms doing quadrilles, contras. What is a quadrille? Okay. A square is a... You got it. A square of 4 couples would be a quadrille, but also 4 people in a little cluster happens to be a quadrille. And if you look at some of the early history of some of these dances, some were danced as sort of a long ways dance with little groups of 4, and it was called, I think the French, or I'm not sure, French or English or Italians called it la quadrille, of a 4-person dance. So quadrilles were very popular. Long ways dances were popular. We had some early halls that we could get people up and dance in long ways. Very formal dances, many of them. And plus the square type quadrille. And if we go down to the south a little bit, we had an Irish influence into the Kentucky area here. Stu is well aware of all that. And you had, would it be Jonathabethian or Elizabethan? Which would it be? Anyway, there was an English-Irish influence of dances in the South. Now, there's controversy, and I'm gonna get into this kind of early, and we'll get away from it and get off of it. There's controversy about research in the South, in Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, and all that. You had big circle dances, probably more than square dancing. which the big circle dance were the little groups of 4 dancing different little figures and moving on to a new couple and dancing around the floor. The footwork could be shuffling steps. It depends on where you were. It could be skipping steps. It could be running steps. There's all sorts of steps that were involved in that, and a lot of it was regional. If you went into one region, they did it a certain way and they did certain tunes. And actually the calls were different from one region to another. I remember growing up in southern Ohio, and we were influenced by people from the south that come up through eastern Kentucky into our area. And I remember going to a dance, and if the caller said Alaman left and Alaman chon and all run away with a harness on, meant to do a left Alaman and a right and left grand. That was running away with a harness on. Interesting calls. And a gentleman by the name of Cecil Sharp from England researched a lot of those Appalachian dances. And he come away with a lot of material, a great book, and that book is still available, is it not? You happen to have that in your... He has this. And Cecil Sharp come up with the idea that the running set was running in the circle and running in the set. That's one school of thought. There's another school of thought that says running sets mean we're going to run a set. Have you ever heard of the term, we're going to run a batch? Run a batch, that means run some shine, run some moonshine. And the term run a set meant that we're going to run a set. We're going to have a set tonight. We're going to run one. So there's two schools of thought on it. Which is right, which is wrong, I don't know. But I get information from both sides on what that is. But in the Cecil Sharp book, it says that they were doing a running step, and it was a running set. And usually danced, am I correct in saying this, as a big circle dance? Would I be right in saying that? Okay, good. I want to get your approval. Feel better because you supplied me with a bunch of records and I owe you. Checks in the mail. That's what they all say. Now, a quick look at, through the East Coast, we had pockets of dancing again, Irish influence, Scottish influence, and all of a sudden we started getting publications like the Cecil Sharp book. People would research certain areas, or maybe a caller would publish a book about the dancing in that area. And if you're into collecting, I'm sort of into collecting books, you'll go to one area in Maine somewhere, and it was different. The terminology was a little different. The dancing was a little different. And maybe the music might be a little different. You may go to Boston and get a completely different dance, the booklets and all the pocket things that they had, because people had to go to a dance master and learn to dance, learn the quadrille, then you would go to a dance and dance. Okay? Now, what happens if you didn't quite know the dance? They had the dance master who would come out and politely ask you to step back and watch. Does that sound familiar? I know of a challenge group one night that said, you should go watch, stay out of that. So history repeats itself to a certain extent. And the old-time dancing faded away in some of those areas. It became complicated and people had other things to do and kind of backed off of it. Okay, let's swing right now to some of the music that was used in the early dances. Probably the real early dances, we used singing dances, where you would join hands in a circle or join hands in a square and dance and sing and move to the music and do our dance. Well, a little later on, we got the fiddler. The fiddler would fiddle for the dance and you would dance. And there are old stories that I've heard about in New England where they'd have a kitchen junket, or sometimes called a kitchen sweat, where they clear out the furniture, get a set in the kitchen, and they put the fiddler over in the dry sink. Well, anybody know about dry sinks? They weren't exactly dry. No, they had a pitcher pump on the other side. And as the fiddler played, he would do the calls, cue the calls, and sing. And every once in a while, some kid would go over and hit that pitcher pump and fill the fiddler's pants full of water, which really upset the dance, upset the fiddler, and they had a little dispute at that time. So that was sort of some of the early dances within the houses and so forth, and the music was a fiddle. Well, as things grew and they got halls and so forth, they moved on to bands, dancing bands. They moved on to orchestras, where you had a lot of music being played. And in some of the very early halls that they built, the halls were crowned. The floor was crowned. For the simple reason that when you dance polkas and you dance dances around the edge of the floor, if you know, you gradually move into the center of the floor. So to keep that from happening, they had like this trough around the edge. You couldn't see it, but as soon as you dance on it, doing a circle dance, you'll find that you stay out there and everything's fine. Well, when you do the quadrilles, all of a sudden we were getting bald spots in the middle of the floor because all the quadrilles would move to either side. So that presented a little problem. But some of those halls still exist in New England with the crown floor. And usually the good floors had buggy springs under the floor, so you had a nice, danceable, cushiony type floor to dance on. So if you went to the dance, you really had a good time, and you really felt good dancing. And there were certain rules within that hall about no spitting on the floor, no lewd moves towards the ladies, or you'd be expelled from the hall. And they had this list. Now, I should have brought that list along. It's a very interesting list. Maybe someday in one of our other sessions we'll do that. Okay, we're moving on to music, live music, fiddlers. Now, the next thing happened to be music boxes. We're all familiar with music boxes with the metal thing that plays and little holes in it. Swiss boxes, Regina boxes, Regina, or whatever you want to call it. And some dances were in this thing. So if somebody wanted to have a parlor dance or sometimes a small hall dance, you could get this out and wind up this music box and it would play and you'd have some music to dance to. Okay, next step. Let's move on to the player piano. That was great because the piano could fire it up there and somebody could pump the piano and pedal it, and you had music and you had dance. Now there's a very neat thing that come out, and there's a museum in Marion, Ohio that has one of these, and I would give my right arm to have it, but it's a small music box that has a roll, like a piano roll across the top, perforated roll, and a little crank, and you crank the crank, and the music starts because it's going over the top, and as it turns, the bottom of this roll is ladies chain, circle left, promenade your partner, so you could step the tempo up, you could slow it down, and you could do your calls. For you reading callers, it would be great. It's almost as good as a laptop.
That's the way the challenge callers do it today with the computers. The computer plays the music and the callers come right up there.
Yeah, sure. You used to do it with
notes.
You
do that, don't you, Bob?
Anyway, moving along, folks. The next step that we found was Thomas Alva Edison. Does that mean anything to anybody in this room? The great inventor who invented many, many things. A light bulb, of course. I'm sure he worked on that. And he happened to have a home right here in Louisville. He traveled by train cross country, and he would go, I don't know where he went. Did he go to the Southwest somewhere? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, his stop-off, like an overnight stop-off, was here in Louisville. And then he'd get on the train and go on to New Jersey. Orange, New Jersey, I think, was his Menlo Park. And that's where he had his laboratory and did his work. And he wanted to develop a machine, some sort of a recording or talking machine that you could use in industry. You could use it in an office. And of course, he later on developed this, but somebody got him off the track. Either Henry Ford or somebody talked him out of it and said, why don't you make a machine that people can have in their homes, in the parlor, and have music and all this sort of stuff? And he thought, well, you know, okay, if you think that's good. Well, it was very successful. And he had I don't know if you're familiar with the cylinder records. There's a cylinder record right there. It happens to be an Edison record. Has Thomas Alva right there on the on the box, excuse me. And the early records that he used happened to be made out of tinfoil, of all things. And then he went to beeswax, and if you had a hot summer, that was kind of the end of your collection. So he went to some sort of a Bakelite plastic. I'm not sure what it is, but this happens to be one of the cylinder records, which is very collectible. I collect the cylinder record players when I can afford it. If I have a good year, we might buy one. Anyway, somebody said, why don't you come up with a smaller record player, something that we can take out to the beach or take it to the picnic or something like that? So he developed a small unit called the Fireside Recorder, which was, you could put had a little horn that went on it, and happened as a little speaker, and I'll show you what the speaker looks like. Here's the horn, little brass end on it, and japanned, they call that japanning, lacquered. And this little horn was like this, and you could put it onto the machine and hear the music play and do your thing. And somewhere there's some very rare cylinders that I'm looking for that have quadrilles on them. If you hear of any, let me know. You've got one? I got to talk with you. We'll kiss. We'll kiss and make up. Well, moving along to Henry Ford, who had a big impact on American square dancing, and a real strange thing happened. This is a little sideline here. In the 1920s, he developed his Model T Ford, which was a great car, and people decided that, hey, we don't want to sit around the house and listen to that old squeaky talking machine. Let's go out and ride in the car. Great. So the machine was put in the closet somewhere, and people went out touring in the car. Well, about 20 years ago, people started, these things became very collectible, the cylinder record players. They're still very collectible. And they found that they could find the Fireside model of the thing, but no horns for it. They couldn't figure where the horns went. What happened to the horns? Lo and behold, if you know anything about a Model T Ford, the oil filter is clear down the bottom of the engine. So if you take this horn, shove it down there, you pour the oil in the engine. So when the Model T Ford went out of being, all these were scrapped. They're probably in the back seat of the Model T somewhere. We lost all the horns. Little sidelight here. I don't know if you're interested in that, but so far so good. Okay, let's move on to Henry Ford's next move was to come up with, or Thomas Edison, come up with some sort of flat records instead of the cylinders. Now, I have one of his flat records, and look at the thickness of that sucker. And I'm not sure, it was some sort of Bakelite plastic, whatever it is. And that's interesting. Turkey in the straw. Can you see some caller getting out in some room, some hall somewhere? Yeah, I think it's pretty good shape, yeah. Okay, so far so good. I'll check with you later. You owe me anyway. Now, the next step in recording was the thinner records that were about like this. You've seen those, haven't you, Jim? Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to. Don't hit that machine. Pretty tough record, isn't it? Anyway, they were very breakable, and a lot of you that have been calling for a few years probably carried those cases of vinyl. It wasn't vinyl, I guess, at that time. It was some plastic, some kind, around in our shellac records, in our cases. And as time went on, those went out of style, and fortunately, oh, heavy. Anyway, in the recording business, along come a thing called wire recording. Anybody know about wire recording? Yes, you had 2 spools of wire that fed through a head, and you could record on that and so forth to make sound. Okay, well, those didn't work real well because that thing would fly apart and you'd have problems with it. Quality wasn't very good. So then we went to reel-to-reel recording. Now, I jumped ahead one notch. Prior to that, we had acetate masters. Would it be a master or a mother? I'm not sure. Anyway, it was made, you'd go to the recording studio, they would record into a microphone and into this disc that was revolving on a lathe, and that disc would be the starting of a stamper, a mother, all that to stamp out 78 records. Then the wire recorder come along. They started using the wire recorder, and then the tape recorder come along, reel-to-reel tape, which was really a godsend for the recording industry, and they could do all sorts of splicing and everything of which you couldn't do on an acetate disc. From 78 records, we went to 45 RPM record. I'm still using 45s, folks. They're still being made. Not a bad record. 45s. Now, here's one that's very interesting. This was put out by McGregor. And I happen to be... That's one of my old records here. It was a 33 1/3 RPM to get more time on a record. And guess what it was called? A mini disc. It's printed right on the record. That's the forerunner of the real mini disc. Okay, mini disc. The next one happened to be the LP. Oh boy, where'd you get this? There is this young lady over here about 90 years ago. And the young guy on there is my son. So we're going back a few years. This was sold, we sold a whole series of records through Sears and Roebuck. And this happened to be one that was sold. It was sold under 3 or 4 different labels. And I was sold to one organization. I think it was Woolworth or somebody. And they renamed me, and I had an account, and my name was Holler Hawkins. Holler Hawkins. You see a record of Holler Hawkins, it's Old Jer. And from there, we went to cassettes. Now, a cassette was an 8-track tape. This really wasn't a cassette. This was an 8-track tape. From here, we went to cassettes, of which I searched this whole thing, and I could not find a cassette tape to show it to you. Nobody had a cassette tape. I have 2 at home, but I don't have them with me. You don't have any with you? No. Yes. Oh, I forgot. Okay, thank you. Here's a cassette. We all know what those are and what they look like. Good, there's the cassette. Are we picking this up on the camera? Yes. Sure we are. Now, from there, we went to digital recording, to CDs, compact discs. And that happens to be one that yours truly helped record. This happens to be the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra on Telarc label. And if you're in the classical department of some record place, buy that record. I need the royalty. And yes. Oh, yeah, you can buy these at Kmart. Sure. And this was probably one. This is probably one of the first square dances recorded with digital on a compact disc. Very early, and it has some really nice things on it. Eric Kunzel is the. I don't know if you know of Eric Kunzel. He does all the Capitol, the big time 4th of July here in Washington D.C. and quite a conductor and a nice gentleman to work for. Okay, how we doing here? And you got mini discs. We know about mini discs, not the ones that I had here, but the mini disc, and from mini disc to MP3s, and to, I guess you'd call it hard drive. Yeah. Now, does that bring us up to anything beyond that now? Right now, anything new beyond that? Anybody know? Good. That's what? iPod. Yeah, iPod. So we've come a long way with our music. The great advantage today is that you can change speed with it, and you don't change the key. You can, it'll never wear out, really. It goes on, and you always got a nice crisp sound, and that's some of the advantages of that. Okay. Let's go back a little bit to good old... Yes. Unless it has an AC hum in it. Looking at...
I should repeat that comment for the
do that
tape,
for the
because
tape, yes, please.
I'm an offender here, and I'll get shot down by the executive committee if I don't.
Right.
Bob Howell is now using the computer as the storage compartment for his music for almost everything you do, right, Bob? And it shows you that what's new can be used even by those of us who are not new ourselves.
Okay. All right. Moving along. How's our time doing, Jim? Make some music. Okay. Henry Ford was really one of the first people to record some music and dance and so forth, and he did it upright. He recorded music with a caller, and for his, which we'll get into, his singing calls, he contracted a opera singer to sing the music on it because their caller probably did not do too well at singing, and I wish I could do that myself. And we're going to start off with, and I thank Stu. Stu put this together for us on a CD. And let's see. We're going to start with a dance called the Lancers. Lancers were a 5-part quadrille that people would get up and do. And each part of that quadrille, each of those 5 things had a little different music on it and a little different figure. Now, Bob last night did a visiting type dance. You went out to visit and do a little dance, on to the next visit, do a little dance. Well, here is the part, here is the Lancer part, and I think that's on figure 4, be 16, track 16. And this is the original Henry Ford recording. It's on a CD and cleaned up a little bit. Okay. Okay, we'll get to 16. 16 is the visiting part of the Lancers, where you have the first couple lead out, do something, on to the next lead out, and it's the forerunner of our visiting type dance that we do. And we'll have it here in just a second. Number 16. Are you ready? Play, please. Is it on? Is it in the right place? Is there any kind of a switch on that thing? On this? Yes. Let's open up for questions. Here's. Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a good time to do it right now. Your name, serial number.
Corbin Geis from the central Pennsylvania area. got a question about Henry Ford. Since he played such a spectacular role in the history and heritage of square dancing, has CALLERLAB ever tried to approach the Ford Motor Company for some type of sponsorship or positive advertising with square dancing in America?
Let me update you just a little bit and answer your question. Here we go. Okay, we'll get to see. Here we go. Lancer. Let's see. Really need it with calls. Okay. Yeah, let's see. We want figure. No, that's not it. We want. Let's see here. Yeah. We want Lancer. Is there Lancer? There's a. Let's see. Maybe it's the other disc. Yeah, Lancer. Try 16 on that. See if that. What number did I give you on the first one? 16. 16. Okay, here we go, folks. Okay, back while he's sorting that out. Back to Henry Ford. Henry Ford built a beautiful dance hall in Dearborn, Michigan. I think a lot of folks are aware of that hall. And he used this for his dancing. It was the first of a recreation type dance. A group of current contra dancers have been dancing in that hall. As of last month or 2 months ago, they were asked to leave the hall. Here's the visiting call. And bow. Or undress.
Couples on the left. Address. 8 bicycle places. Address. Guest couples right and left.
Right and left. It's over and back.
Right couple lean to the right. Address.
Okay, let's hold it right there. Good. All righty. We want to move on to one of the early patter calls or visiting type calls called the Lady Round the Lady, which is a spin-off from the idea of visiting one couple visiting another couple. And that would be, I think, 17. Try 17 on that. I think. No, I'm sorry. 17. Yeah, different record. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Back to Henry Ford. I have a feeling that the Ford Motor Company now is having some problems. If they pulled all their dancers or cut off the dancing in their hall, they might not be susceptible. They could be, but they might not be susceptible to a grant at this point. We're not, the people who are... They have, yes. That's not it. But it's nice. 17. Try 17. Okay, and this would... Lady round the lady.
First couple lead to right. Call it lady round the lady, and the gent around the gent. The gent around the lady, and the lady round the gent. 4 hands pass, right and left. Swing your lady once around and lead up to the next. Call it lady round the lady, and the gent around the gent. The gent around the lady. And
we think it's Benjamin Levitt who is calling, I think. Okay. Very good. All right. Now, we're going to do one of the first singing calls, or one of several singing calls, and that would be this one number, this CD number 24. Yeah. Now, evidently the caller wasn't up to calling, I guess, or singing, so they hired the opera singer, so you'll hear the caller one caller, and then you'll hear the opera singer singing. They're going to do Life on the Ocean Wave. Wait a minute here. 24. And he'll announce it. Life on the Ocean Wave.
Life on the Ocean Wave.
There's the opera singer. If I had a girl and she wouldn't dance, I'd tell you what I'd do. I'd buy her a boat and set her afloat. She could paddle her own canoe. Thank you.
Copycat from Seattle, Washington. I actually use that with my second graders, and they think it's great. Hook the elbow, and
Sure,
it's,
of course.
and it's simple.
Yeah, yeah. Almost.
So I didn't do it last night because I thought Grandpa was going to do it.
Can I briefly get down one little? How are we doing time-wise here, Jim? Oh, good. Can I? I'm gonna get out of here, man. This makes me nervous to do these things. No, thank you. The numbering system of the early dances and all the four dances were a strange numbering system. Number 1 would be with her back to the caller. Across from 1, and our normal 3 position that we know would be number 2. And then on the right-hand side would be number 3. And on the left was number 4. The heads would be 1 and 2, and the sides would be 3 and 4. Now you want to hear something really weird? If you take that numbering system and go 1, 2, 4, 3, it's the firing order of a Model T Ford engine. Isn't that weird? I don't know what that means, but anyhow, we're going down a list of some very important people who contributed to the activity, who are active in the very active in the activity. And through the East Coast, Benjamin Lovett happened to be a East Coast caller. He happened to be calling in a inn, and I can't remember the name of that inn. Wayside Inn, way back in Framingham, Mass. And Benjamin was the house caller for this particular inn. And when Henry Ford was searching around, Henry was a collector, and he was searching around the country looking for old cabins, looking for old cars, horses, whatever he could find to take back to his fine, fine museum that he has. If you ever get to Dearborn, go to the museum. Anyway, he had heard of this dance hall, and he heard that they had a fine dance instructor and prompter there. So he and his men decided to spend the night at this inn. So they had a fine time. They went to the ball that night, or went to the dance, and Benjamin Lovett was their caller for the evening, and they danced, and Henry Ford was really impressed with this guy. So he went to Benjamin. He said, you know, I'm building a new dance hall in Dearborn, and I'd like you to come and be my prompter. Well, Benjamin said, I'm very sorry, Mr. Ford. I have a 2-year contract with this inn, and I'm going to have to turn you down. So we all know what happened. Ford bought the place and took Benjamin Lovett to Dearborn, and then Benjamin had a little affair with his wife, and Ford had an affair with one of his men's women. That's more information we want to know. Okay, anyway, there's a book on this, a very interesting book.
You are being recorded.
Hey, I got a good attorney. I got a cousin. He bails me out. Okay. I don't know offhand. There are several books. One book tells all the dirt about Henry Ford. and tells about his dance hall. And the other book is a little more, yeah, it's pretty much straight. I go on the website and pick up. You'll get the book. Yeah. No. Anyway, if you're thinking of a dance book, here's his dance book called Good Morning, and this has all the old dances in it. It has all the music in it. They're very collectible. If you can find one, look in the bookstore, and you'll find one somewhere. And if you find really an old copy, this happens to be a published this is only a 41. If you get one from the 20s or 30s, you may have a nice little thing. So look around, find that book. It has some very interesting pictures in it of early dances that the style that they were dancing back in the 20s and 30s and so forth. So that book is available. Okay, moving right along quickly. Going through the East Coast, we had, I'm going to run some names by you. Al Brundage, Bob Brundage, and Pop Brundage. They were early people who danced and called dances in that area, and Al is still around, Bob is still around. And going up and down the coast, Ralph Page from Keene, New Hampshire, was one of the early leaders and prompters with quadrilles, and this man right here danced with him when he was about 4 years old. And another caller from going down to Long Island was Paul Hunt, who probably was a little earlier. I don't know if he was a 50s man. I think he may have been a 50s man. Okay, good. And there was a gentleman from New York. His name was Ed Durlacher. Ed made a great impact on square dancing because he produced recordings and went out and sold them to all the schools. Ed happened to be a good old New York boy right out of, it was Flushing, New York, or one of those. I'm not sure where he was from. Anyway, he had a voice like this, you know, and every time he called, he sounded like he was scolding you to death. And all these records, he went out and promoted this in all the schools. And to this day, I have people come to me and said, I remember dancing in school, and I really hated it because this caller said, all join hands on the second on the left. And he was pretty much of a character. And I think he may have turned on some people to square dancing, and he may turn some people off of square dancing. Okay, another gentleman from the East who went down south, Don Armstrong, went from up east down to Florida, and a very good caller and a very nice guy. He's deceased. He's no longer with us. We regret that. And we also have an Eastern caller, Ricky Holden, who danced in New England and moved to Texas. I think there was a family, I don't know if they married into somebody in Texas, or anyway, Ricky went down to Texas and researched all the Texas style dancing through Sweetwater and all that, and I'm running out of time. Okay, well, this is to be continued. I'm going to stop right here because I figured it's a 2-hour program, and maybe I can get on, maybe we can do it again, continue this next year. I thank you, Jim, for letting me get up here and do my spiel, and Robert over here, and here we go. Here's Jim. How about a nice hand for Jim?
Who hasn't as yet said anything. Have no fear. One thing I hope you all know, but let me mention it anyway, a brief commercial plug. This book is available in the world. It is the only book that has ever been written about modern square dancing, as distinct from the traditional form. It picks up at about 1950 and talks about modern square dance history. It's available from Palomino, but they're about to shut down. Do note that it's available, and if you don't have a copy, consider getting one. But with the commercial plug aside, the title is Step by Step Through Modern Square Dance History. A fellow by the name of Jim Mayo. I will also mention that it is available online from the author. You can buy it in bookstores. It's available from Palomino. You can order it from Jim Mayo. It is also available online from the publisher, Author House, on their online thing. You can buy a PDF version of it for $5. Now, I have, as I mentioned earlier, recently been interested in the square dance choreography, modern square dance choreography that happened in the late 1950s and very early 1960s. The call swing through was added to our vocabulary in 1963. In the same year, about 6 months, within 6 months, because there was nothing we could do with swing through, or from the formation we ended in, the ocean wave that we were in, after we called a swing through. We added the calls run and trade. And those three collectively changed the character of modern square dance choreography dramatically. But before that, we were still entertaining dancers quite a lot. And I thought it would be interesting to find some tapes of callers calling actual dances during that period of modern square dancing. And I want to finish up today just by playing you a selection from those. I've converted them to CDs. And interesting, for those of you who may have tapes, in the process of playing them and putting them in my computer and making CDs, everyone assured me that the tapes would be fragile and they'd fall apart. The only breaks I have encountered in about 15 tapes that I have used, the only breaks that I have encountered were breaks that had previously been patched with Scotch tape. And those break when you play them. But a tape that has not been patched will go through, and I've not had another break in the tape. So they're much more sturdy than we have expected. I'm going to... Yes, I'm going to play the caller and let you guess who it is. And we'll start right off with the first one. You will notice immediately that the tempos were a bit different in those days. Let me see if I can make this play. You know already? Oh, Arnie Cronenberger. Listen to the choreography.
Turn back on the outside track and you get your own box of man. Ran right and up through down, the next one up and a little one down. Then finally they dance, pretty little thing, 2 by 2 and around the ring. Hold the go around the square and all the way around. When he gets there, right back home with a pretty little thing. Number 1 and 3, move up to the middle and back. Forward again, square 2, 4 hands around you do, and all the way around to the side 2. Put the ring and around the 1, 4, 9, and 10. Forward up and backwards, forward again, now pass 2, join, heel, guard, to the middle, in, turn, in, right,
tired out, are you?
Same 2, square through, 4 hands around you do, and pull them by, now separate it, go down to 1, into the middle, around the left 2, and turn the girl. Now pass 2, split the ring, go down to 1, to a line of 4, once more, go forward up, backward 2, and pass 2, join, hands, arch, in the middle, in, turn, in, right, the left 2, in the middle. Same 2, square through, 3/4 round to go and find the corner. Left out man, grand right and left her.
We called that goalpost choreography because we went around the corners with 4 posts in the corner, and the active dancers, usually 2 couples, went around those corners and did things in the middle and then went through and around the corners. And that was a very common formation of dancing in those days. See if I can get to number 2. Yeah, here we go.
All right, here's one that we all know. I hope we remember. I hope I remember it. Let's try a little bit of honeycomb. Honeycomb.
Still Arnie.
Once around and take a hide in with an arm around. Start pounding, and then back out the girl sweep in and start with the right and the roll away. 4 ladies roll away. Gents start right, girls turn back. One time around you go, then Alabama, that corner lady, and around that ring you roll. Need a hank of hair and a piece of bone. Let's walk and talk with honeycomb and get on home those saddles.
Arnie was good. He was fun to dance to, and I danced to that dance. Okay, here's next one. A former CALLERLAB chairman. You know. Anybody want to guess? Got lots of choices. It's Bob Van Antwerp. And here's Bob on a singing call.
How many been dancing Bambino Mine? Good. Not very many. Here's where it's kind of tell you a little bit. It goes out on the left, go down the lane, go right and a left. Then you quickly turn the sleeve with the left hand and let her chain across. And you're going to chain her back. You're going to catch her by the left like a do paso. That's part of it. The other part is the first and third couples. Oh, let's just try it. Let's see what happens. The only thing, whenever you start with the right, you have to come back for the left. Remember, you're going to work with one couple one time for a right and left through, and work with another couple on the right and left through the next time. Take your corner by the hand, shake her, and say, good luck. Well, Alan and let's go down the lane, go right and left, and what do you know? You turn this girl, old lady chain. You chain her back to a do paso. You corner on the right. You park your left hand around. Now pull your corner right on by. Left out of man. Grand right and left. Hand over hand. You promenade. Go down the line. You've got your baby. Bambina mine. Get couple star on the right. Go 2 by 2. Now back for the left. Your corner right and left through. You turn this girl. Dive through. Do a half sashay. Star by the right now. Now back for the left to the other 2. Go right or left 2. You turn this girl. Dive 2. Pass 2. Your corner swing. You swing your scalp. Promenade. Go down the line. You've got your baby. Bambina mine.
Join hands, circle to the left, around the left, circle left, around you go, all the way till you get back home. And now left down a man, and it is I do with a partner man, and square to my poor lady's chain. Now chain 'em back, and hit 2 couple square through. It's twice around while the sides divide and square through. Outside the set, all the way around to go. To the corner, lady, swing the corner, girl, and promenade to go round that whirl.
It's not fair. It's me. Yeah. I was.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Change of pace. Here comes a dance that's fairly new on the market. Big Daddy.
This is the dance that made Wheel and Deal a core call in square dancing.
Chain 'em back, Big Daddy's Alabama bound. And now it's head, couples right, circle round that track. You break to a line, go forward, up and up back. Then you pass through, Wheel and Deal, double pass through. First couple go left and the next go right, and square through you do. 4 hands around, go to that corner, lady, swing. You swing with your corner, promenade the old ring. There's no need of searching.
Johnny Davis is the guy that recorded that, and it truly was a classic. It made Wheel and Deal into the standard call in our vocabulary that it became. It was also a very tightly timed figure. Notice that everybody in the room was singing the words exactly as they were recorded. We didn't mess with good singing call figures in those days.
Y'all jump up and never come down, swing your honey, go around and around. Woo! Left Alabama, well, look out, man, right to left brain, hand in hand, there they go to the rhythm of the band. Meet a partner, promenade, promenade, don't.
This is the guy that taught me.
Talking around, and now, gents roll back with the quarter whirl, they're gonna promenade a brand new girl. Head dance the girl with you, and the wheel them around, go right and left, do, and turn this girl. You cross trail, you turn back, 2 ladies, Dixie chain, move on to the next 2 ladies.
Dick Jones is on this disc, but this isn't Dick Jones, it's Al Brundage.
We George Brown, well now you're Allen and left you on the girl, they're gonna dose it at home. Men step in the stern for the left, 1 time round your own. Bob starting in and the ladies start left, go 1 time round. Pull me to chain and then you box and add. Well,
easier to recognize on a singing call.
Left down the man from there.
Bow to the partner, hip bow to the corner, 3 face 1, then your girl. Oh, yeah.
I wanted to capture that little bit on the disc.
Let's start all over again, huh? I don't know why I even asked the question. Oh, well, what the heck. Now bow to the partner. Now bow to the corner. Element left with the corner. Grand right and left. Hand over, hand around. You meet your girl, you promenade and promenade, go 2 by 2. Take the girl and home you go and get along home. Now head to the middle and back. Now forward again, rise and left through and turn around. Now pass to separate around 1. Make a line, 8, go 8 to the middle and back. Now pass through and all turn left, single file and round to go. Then turn around and Dixie Grand. Go right and left, left element, here to go right, left, right.
Listen to the figure coming up.
You meet a promenade to go round, take a little walk around the ring. Home, and here we go. Now number 1, chain to the left. Side 2 ladies chain across. Now number 1, lead to the right, circle up 4, gent 1 break and make a little line. Go forward to the middle and back. Now forward again, stand pat, couple 3, pass through, 1 on each side, both turn right, with a couple you meet, Dixie chain. Keep going straight ahead, around behind the line, 2 ladies chain behind the line. Now turn these girls forward and back. Now forward, swing the opposite, mat right there, face to the line, we've got a big T. Go forward 8 to the middle and back, just a line, half sachet. Now arch in the middle, the ends turn in, right and left through, in the middle you 2, and turn around. If you're facing out, California twirl automatically. Now pass to left out, and your left hand, and here to go right, left runner.
Sometime you might be tempted to ask, how did we make things interesting with just a few calls to work with? I think that's the answer. And anybody tell me who he is? Dick Jones. And Dick Jones had a classic singing call.
Walk all around that corner, seesaw your pet, put the lady in the lead, go single file, go walking around the set, girls turn back, 2 times will do.
It was his song.
You meet 'em, turn right hand round, head do an element left in the corner, right hand round your own, then star left in the middle of the ring and turn it, turn it, turn it. You pick 'em up, start from a head, keep going round, you don't slow down. Right here, 4 ladies chain 'em over. Hurry, don't be slow. Girls star back, partner left to no paso. You corner right, head partner left. Go swing your corner, full-hearted girl.
Yeah. And it went on and on and on and on and up. And out through the roof, absolutely.
Well, about the partners in the corners, all an element left that corner down. They're gonna do some around your rolling, promenade, go round the town, you promenade. Now 1 and 3, you wheel around and pass through, and you turn back. Half square through, go red and hop the right hand lady with the right hand round. The partner by the left, go all the way around. Turn corner, follow the right hand down, and it don't fall down. And the partner by the left, 4 ladies chain. Go cross square and turn on around. When you get there, girls start back, and it don't be slow. And a her by the left, don't pass so. And a her by the left, and the corner by the right. Turn partner by the left to the corner, do that corner. Now see you saw the pretty little dog. Then out of man, I'll let your corners on. Go promenade your lady fair. You get, go round the square. 2 and 4, forward, up and back with you. Scooby-Dooby-Dooby-Doo. Do a round and through and turn your Sue, cross trail through. Go round 1, just like that. Move into the middle and box them out. Do a round and through.
More goalpost.
Through 75%. Left out of man, and a home you go with a dose on do. Then promenade, you promenade, and it don't slow down. And a 2 and 4, wheel around, you do a round up through, and you turn on around, move up to the middle and back. Now start through, pass through, and you turn back and box, and then do a round up through, go the other way back. Then square through 6/8 around, and you pull on by an element on your corner guy. Here we go with a round up.
Hey, we tried anything to keep it interesting with just a few calls. Yeah. They were young then.
Element of that corner girl, don't see
to the left, around you wrong, left Alabama. Now weave that big old ring. Hey, look, ma, no hands. I didn't touch a thing, do, side, do. Then a left Alabama, run home and swing cha-cha-cha. Promenade the land, well, you promenade. There's plenty of time, oh, little girl, you're mine, oh, mine.
All right, I thought you'd find it interesting to hear some of the legends of the past. And I have had a marvelous time making the CDs from these things, and I've got full dance tapes. These are each one tip out of each of those full dances, but it's kind of fun to look back and see what kind of choreography we used in those days. We had some good times, didn't we? We sure did. Hey, I want to thank you all for coming out to our session this afternoon. We've had a good time sharing our experiences from the past, and I'd like a round of applause for Bob and Jerry. And thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
I need to make a presentation.